Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored, of course, by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way, and I would love to get your thoughts on any and all of them. The number to text or call into is 719-247-1313. You can also reach out via X. I am at Gingerly Tweets. Let's start today with possibly the end to our long national nightmare known as the Jonas Valanciunas saga. Here is Ben Tenzer, who we may have found out now. Ben Tenzer is the designated interviewee. If you interview one of the GMs, he's the one that's going to jump on the phone. We're just trying to figure out who's responsible for what, so we can give credit, right? Because they've had a terrific offseason, he and John Wallace. But Ben Tenzer was on Altitude Sports Radio earlier today and was asked if he knew about the offer from Greece or whether it caught him by surprise.
I don't want to speak on all the specifics out there, but from our perspective, we had no issues from our end. You know, he's under contract in the NBA, and we had indications that he was going to honor that contract, and we were never worried about anything going on out there, to be honest.
Again, now audio from Altitude Sports Radio. That was earlier this afternoon. I don't know that answers the question that I posed yesterday. Like, he says they got an indication that he was going to honor his contract. That's probably the most significant part of what Ben Tenzer said there. That they got indications that he was going to honor his contract. Does he want to honor his contract? Does he still feel that way? Like, he's speaking in the past tense. We got indications. Now, we've been told now that he's good to go. None of that says Jonas Valanciunas is a Denver Nugget. He's happy to be a Denver Nugget. He'll be in Denver. The last part, that last one, that is what Ben Tenzer is saying. He'll be in Denver. And they have basketball law on their side on this. Jonas Valanciunas cannot leave to go to Greece without the Nuggets signing off on it. So I guess I never truly thought that he was going to go to Greece, because the Nuggets are well within their right to keep him on the Denver Nuggets. But again, as I asked yesterday, is Jonas Valanciunas conceding that he has no recourse? Or was this, and I asked this when this story first came up, I would imagine this was something that was at least percolating while he was still a Sacramento King. Mutual interest at the very least. Right? And my thing was, okay, he has this offer from Panathinaikos in Greece, but he's going to go to a better spot in the NBA. Does that change his mind at all? Was he weighing his basketball life in Greece versus in Sacramento? Or is he just weighing the United States versus Greece? Does the fact that he is being traded now to a title contender mean anything? And everything that Jonas Valanciunas has said, or more accurately not said, because the guy's been speaking in riddles this whole time. Yesterday, he was asked about the trade, and he said, I'd rather talk about the national team, the Lithuanian national team that he's going to be on. They play at Eurobasket next month. Nikola Jokic expected to play for Serbia, by the way, in that competition. Perhaps Jokic can go to him and get a straight answer. But everything Jonas Valanciunas says seems like he's not 100% sold on being in Denver. And it's not anything to do with too much pressure or him not liking the city of Denver or clashing. Like, I don't think this is, if anyone has taken this as a slight against the Nuggets organization, the city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you shouldn't. Now, in an ideal world, Jonas Valanciunas would be so enamored with the idea of playing for the Denver Nuggets in the city of Denver, in the state of Colorado, that he would immediately shun Panathinaikos. But we know that's not true. How many times has he been here? A few times during his career. Like, I'm not expecting the guy to have Denver as one of his destination cities where he'd like to live. Or even the Nuggets to be one of his destination organizations. This is an America and NBA versus Greece and Panathinaikos and that league. Because clearly getting traded to the Denver Nuggets has not swayed him. Because he'd rather talk about the Lithuanian national team than the Denver Nuggets. Why? The trade just went down. It's newsworthy. Why aren't you willing to talk about it? So when Ben Tenzer says we got indications that he was going to honor his contract, how recent were those indications? And Ben Tenzer saying that he's going to be in Denver, I have no reason. That tells me they're not willing to buy him out. And David Adelman's talking about him being the best fit since DeMarcus Cousins to back up Nikola Jokic and being this point center and all of this kind of stuff. They want the guy. So I get it. You're not going to allow him to be bought out. You're not going to agree to that, and he's going to be in Denver. You have control over that. But what is this guy going to be when he's on the Denver Nuggets? Because following this team just a couple of years ago, the level of buy-in it takes to win a title. The amount of sacrifice it requires, how difficult it is, just how tough it is to win a title. Jonas Valanciunas is a key member of the Denver Nuggets. Not the most important player by any stretch of the imagination, but his acquisition is key. And if his heart is somewhere else, or his mind is somewhere else, or he's gearing up for an eventual move next offseason, I would have questions about what that guy is giving the Denver Nuggets. So if you take anything away from what Ben Tenzer said, it's that the Nuggets aren't going to agree to a buyout. They're going to tell him, if they haven't already, that we expect you to play for the Denver Nuggets. But clearly, Jonas Valanciunas is not over the moon excited about that, because he's been asked repeatedly about it over the last week, or has been asked every time he's been made available to the media. Last week at an event, yesterday, and he doesn't say anything about the Denver Nuggets, refuses to talk about them. So clearly he's at least conflicted about the whole thing. But the bottom line is going to be, will this impact the Denver Nuggets' chances to win a title? And I think as much as anybody outside of the starting five, the answer is yes. Can he impact it as much as I always go back? It starts with Jamal Murray for me. Is Jamal Murray going to play at an all-star level? Is he going to be in shape, healthy for 82 plus however many games they play in the postseason? That's the most important thing. Because I know when I'm getting with Jokic, and you saw in Game 7 what Aaron Gordon, the lengths he's willing to go to try and get the Denver Nuggets to a title. So I'm not worried about those two guys. What kind of step forward does Christian Brown take this year? Cam Johnson, his fit, replacing Michael Porter. All of those are more important than Jonas Valanciunas. But we keep talking about depth and how important depth is. And Indiana was deep, and that's why they got out of the East. And Oklahoma City, all their depth. Well, Jonas Valanciunas is the most important bench player that the Denver Nuggets have. So as much as anybody in that role can impact a team's ability to win a title, Jonas Valanciunas will impact their chances of winning a title. But this has happened before with the Denver Nuggets. They had a player, he was a center as well, who a while ago, the Nuggets were just starting to kind of figure some things out, right? They realized what they had in Nikola Jokic. It was starting to turn in the right direction. And they wanted Yusuf Nurkic to be a part of it. They wanted to give him a role on the team. He didn't want to accept his role. And the Denver Nuggets begrudgingly, but still came to a point pretty quickly. We can't have this. We can't have this dynamic. We can't have a guy that is not pulling in the same direction, that is not bought in on what we're trying to do. Now, the Denver Nuggets are at a different stage in their franchise, but this offseason's not dissimilar to that, right? They were able to finally move off of one of these large contracts and kind of reshape their team to fit the financial model that everyone has to fit into in the NBA. They finally got that trade done. They traded Porter. They opened up this space. They said, yeah, we're still on player development, but we're going to bring in a bunch of veterans. Like this is an offseason that the Nuggets have reshaped themselves in a little bit. And it feels like for the first time since they won a title, they really have pointed the needle up. So how long is it going to be? It's not Jonas Valanciunas' role necessarily, although I'm sure he's going to be the man in Greece. So maybe that's part of it. But ultimately, it's where he wants to be at this point in his career. Like Yusuf Nurkic didn't want to be a backup to Nikola Jokic at that point in his career. And the Denver Nuggets had to make the tough decision. Like, we can't have this dynamic on our team. And the stakes were much lower back then than they are right now. So Jonas Valanciunas is going to be a Denver Nugget. Take Ben Tenzer at his word. But are they getting the best version of him? Is he going to be the guy that they need him to be? Or is there going to be another dynamic forming where you look at this around Christmas and go, there's a dynamic here that is hampering the Denver Nuggets, and they need to do something about it? Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Just getting going on this Tuesday edition of the show. Coming up next, in advance of training camp opening up across the National Football League, ESPN interviewed dozens of talent evaluators, general managers, scouts to compile a list of the best players at every position in the NFL, especially the quarterbacks. See if you agree, and what would it take Bo Nix doing this year to join this list? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. All next week, I'll be broadcasting the show live from the campus of Colorado College, the site of the DoD Warrior Games. If you recall, a handful of years ago, this came through. It was at the Air Force Academy, and it is featuring men and women representing every branch of our nation's military, competing in a variety of adaptive sports. You could support the resiliency and dedication of military service members by going to DoDWarriorGames.com. And while you're out there cheering on those athletes, come by, say hi. I haven't seen exactly where I'm going to be set up, but I will be under a bright yellow Extra Sports 1310. I will not be hard to find, like Deion Sanders. I won't be hard to find. ESPN. Now, this is where ESPN still does well. We can say things about their daily programming, but when you are somebody in a league, whether it's the NBA or the NFL, and someone from ESPN contacts you, you usually talk to them so they can compile lists like this. So they interviewed, I think, what did they say, upwards of 70 people, league personnel, to rank the best 10 players at every position in the NFL. Of course, the quarterback rankings are the ones that most people are interested in, including myself. So here's what league personnel, people inside the National Football League, not that cover it. This isn't a poll of ESPN staff. These are people working in the National Football League right now. Here's who they say the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL are. At number 1, they have Patrick Mahomes, which is obviously the right call. I understand after these many years that people are actively looking to put someone else above Patrick Mahomes, but right now you just can't. And I know that his numbers are not the Star Wars numbers he put up when he had Tyreek Hill and prime Travis Kelce. But if Josh Allen just got an MVP, despite having worse numbers than Lamar Jackson because of the idea that he did more with less, couldn't that same courtesy be extended to Patrick Mahomes? And yet that team still ended up in a Super Bowl. What I did find interesting here, and in some of the context of why he was ranked number 1, backs up what I'm saying. Because the Chiefs this offseason went out and rebuilt their offensive line. They just gave a massive contract to Trey Smith, one of their offensive linemen. The wide receiver group was a rotating cast of characters, yet inevitably, as it feels like it's been for every year for 20 years, even though it hasn't been that long, it was Mahomes and Reed standing atop the AFC West. And it was, once again, Mahomes and Reed in the Super Bowl. One thing I did find interesting, though, one AFC scout said that Mahomes, quote, probably doesn't have that same fear factor, which I find interesting because, again, he was able to still get the Chiefs to a Super Bowl despite a broken offensive line, a rotating cast of characters at wide receiver, and an aging Travis Kelce. Still good Travis Kelce, don't get me wrong, but not Travis Kelce at the height of his powers anymore. Yet, still able to get to the Super Bowl. I find that very interesting. And I think some of that, if it is true that some of that fear factor has started to go away, I think Patrick Mahomes, this feels like one of those seasons where he's going to try and put that fear back in the rest of the league. for the last couple of years, there have been a lot of people saying negative things about Patrick Mahomes, including most recently somebody calling him fat. I think with the Chiefs' moves they made to the offensive line, hopefully for them, more stability at wide receiver, I think that we're going to see a bounce back year from Patrick Mahomes. And maybe that fear will be back into opposing teams. That idea of no matter how much time is left on the clock, if Patrick Mahomes is trotting onto the field, you will inevitably think to yourself, that's too much time for Mahomes. I don't know that fear has gone away because he still won a lot of really close games this year. But Patrick Mahomes at number one, no issue with that whatsoever. No issue with number two on the list, Josh Allen, the reigning MVP. And I think what differentiates he and Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson is fourth, by the way, which I do not agree with. The top four, which is everybody's top four. This, until further notice, if you are taking any one of these four quarterbacks out of the top four or putting any other quarterback into the top four, that's not one of these four guys, you're wrong. It's Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. There is a gap between who I would say would be Joe Burrow and the next best quarterback in the league. I think that there's some room between Mahomes and everybody else, but I think there's even more space between that top four and everyone else in the NFL. So when I do think you could make some arguments within that top four, not for number one, but if you want to go Lamar 2, Josh Allen 3, and take a longer view of it and not be so beholden to Josh Allen winning the MVP this year, that's fine. But I think why I side with the NFL personnel on this is because Josh Allen was able to do more with less in Buffalo, and Lamar Jackson, and I think this is part of the reason why Joe Burrow jumped over Lamar Jackson in these ratings or is above him. Because you look at Lamar Jackson, and no one's saying he's not brilliant. Right? Unequivocally, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But we're really splitting hairs when it comes to this top four. Look, you look at Lamar Jackson and you look at some of these other lists ESPN put out. Lamar Jackson has the second best running back in football. He has two of the top 10 tight ends in football in Andrews and Likely. Yes, even after the drop pass in the postseason, Mark Andrews still ranks sixth, according to NFL personnel. Good offensive line, obviously an elite defense, and yet Lamar Jackson, for as great as he is, has not broken through and had that ultimate playoff success that you would expect of him. Now, it's not enough to knock him out of the top four. It's not enough to say that Lamar Jackson is overhyped or overrated. But again, we're splitting hairs here with the absolute best of the best. I would go Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, and then Joe Burrow. But Joe Burrow's how he carried the Cincinnati Bengals almost to the playoffs, I think is weighing in on this. I think his history against Patrick Mahomes, more success than most quarterbacks can say they have. He's absolutely one of the four best quarterbacks in the NFL. I would just have him fourth. And according to ESPN, he actually dropped from last year, which is interesting. But Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, that's the correct top four. I don't think you argue somebody. To me, it's like Jokic. Okay, if you want to give the MVP to somebody else, like you want to give the MVP to SGA, that's fine. I mean, I'll disagree with it, but okay. Don't say that SGA now becomes the best player in the NBA, because Jokic is that. He has that title, and you can't take it away from him. Not yet. Same thing with Patrick Mahomes. You want to recognize, because the MVP is only quarterbacks. We know this. If you want to give the MVP to somebody else, that's fine. But Mahomes is still the best quarterback in football. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because I don't think maybe you might disagree with how I rank those top four, but again, I don't know who can, with a straight face, make a case for anybody else to be in that top four. Here's where it gets interesting. They have Jaden Daniels as fifth. And there will be a prevailing theme throughout this lead up to the NFL season and even during the season. I believe that both the Commanders and the Denver Broncos, and I should say that Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels, and by extension, the Commanders and the Broncos will not take a step forward this year. They will not be better than they were a year ago. In terms of record, I don't think either is going to surpass what they did last year, and I don't think statistically you're going to look at Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix and said that they did better in year two than year one. Doesn't mean I'm out on either guy, but we've seen this with CJ Stroud. We saw it with Jordan Love. We see it with a lot of quarterbacks. Defensive coordinators get game film, they make adjustments, and it's on the still very young quarterbacks, even though the joke is Bo Nix is not young. He is young in his NFL experience. It takes them a while to catch up. I don't think that Jaden Daniels being fifth is insanely high, because I do believe in Jaden Daniels long term. And when I say he's going to take a step back this year, I don't mean that he's going to crater. I don't mean that he's going to be terrible. But he had such an amazing rookie season, both individually and team success-wise, that I just think it's too much to ask him to surpass that. Can Washington still be a playoff team if Jaden Daniels is a little less than he was last year? Absolutely they can, because they made it to the NFC Championship game. They can absolutely still be a playoff team if Jaden Daniels isn't quite what he was last year. And then year three, that's where I see Jaden Daniels really popping, and then we might have to start thinking about putting Jaden Daniels in that group of four that I just mentioned, or at least close the gap more between the top four and him. Right now, after one season, I will still take Matthew Stafford over Jaden Daniels. And Matthew Stafford is sixth on this list. Every time, he's the most forgotten quarterback in the National Football League. We have these discussions with quarterbacks, and then it's always, oh yeah, Matthew Stafford. This guy's won a Super Bowl recently. This guy was on the cusp of getting to another Super Bowl this year. I just think he is the most slept on quarterback, and it's not, I don't know that anybody thinks that Matthew Stafford isn't good, but like, he's forgotten and left out of these conversations so often, and he needs to be in here. The lack of success he had in Detroit, you know the real reason for that. He was as prolific as any quarterback in the NFL in Detroit, and the minute he had even a little bit of help, a little bit of a defense, a little bit of coaching in LA, he wins the Super Bowl. So it's not that people want to bury Matthew Stafford. It's just I feel like we always have to remind ourselves, oh yeah, Matthew Stafford. And I would have him above Jaden Daniels. So I'm not saying that Jaden Daniels it's crazy that he's fifth. But I would put Stafford above him. And interesting that ESPN, that he actually dropped in this poll, despite being, a Jalen Carter sack away from, maybe going to the Super Bowl. Now, gotta take a break, because then it really gets interesting after that. Bo Nix, I'll just tell you now, not in the top 10. But after I give you the rest of this top 10 list, I'll let you know what Bo Nix can do to get into the top 10, because I don't think it is far-fetched that he could be in the top 10. Do I think he'll be? That's another question. But I see the pathway for him to be considered one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL this time next year. Tell you how next on Extra Sports 1300. The Black Keys are hitting the road for their No Rain, No Flowers tour with Gary Clark Jr. and the Heavy Heavy, and we want to send you to see them at the U.S. tour stop of your choice. Just text the national keyword PLAYERS to 95819. That's PLAYERS to 95819. And keep it on this fine radio station all throughout the day, all throughout the week for more national keywords for your chance to win the prize provided by Live Nation. Full contest rules at extrasports1300.com. ESPN pulled a lot of NFL personnel to compile lists of the 10 best players at each position. In the NFL, quarterbacks, the list goes pretty chalky. Mahomes 1, Allen 2, Burrow 3, Lamar Jackson 4. 5, they have Jaden Daniels. I would still like to put Matthew Stafford there as the next best guy that's not that, I don't want to say Mount Rushmore because that's different conversation, but the elite 4. Is there another adjective? I can't think of one based on any movies that are coming out here soon. But that 4, you set them aside. Who's the next best guy? To me, that's Stafford. Jaden Daniels will be there eventually, so I don't have a big issue with him being in that number 5 spot, but I would still keep Matthew Stafford there. They have Stafford 6. And then they go to Justin Herbert, who has become one of the most polarizing quarterbacks in recent NFL memory. He is still 7th. He only dropped 1 spot only because of the emergence of Jaden Daniels. So these talent evaluators, these NFL personnel types, saw the season that Justin Herbert had and said that he only goes down 1 spot because Jaden Daniels had an unbelievable rookie season. So they say same with Justin Herbert. When a lot of people, I think, want to drop Justin Herbert maybe out of the top 10. I think finally we're going to see, and there are some quarterbacks on this list that I think are great examples. Jared Goff is number 8. Baker Mayfield is number 10. Those are good quarterbacks to bring up when talking about Justin Herbert. And even Matthew Stafford is. Because a lot of the reason why Justin Herbert did not have this success that the eye test when you watch this guy play, you say, oh, well, surely he has multiple playoff wins, has been knocking on the door of a Super Bowl. This guy looks like if you told Chat GPT to create a quarterback, it would look like Justin Herbert. One year with Jim Harbaugh, you already see it. The Chargers are playing winning football more than they did with Brandon Staley. Now, did it hit to the degree that the Chargers had a lot more playoff success? No, but you see the beginnings of the Chargers finally realizing the potential they have with a quarterback like Justin Herbert. And there are some other guys, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, were thought about one way, went to a different place, a little bit more competent coaching, a little bit more help on both sides of the football, and then we see what they are truly capable of. The biggest problem with the Chargers was their coach. So maybe the playoff success wasn't what people thought it was going to be or said it had to be. But the Chargers are not. Chargering is going to quickly not be in the vernacular anymore because of Jim Harbaugh. In fact, Chargers this year, 4-4 in one-score games, which that's what it usually is. You see a team that has a great record in one-score games. That could be either because they're the best team in the NFL or there's some luck that is involved in that. Or you look at a team that is bad in one-score games. Ahem, another AFC West team. And you say, all right, some of that is because they're not good enough, but some of it, some bad breaks. 500 in one-score games is mostly what teams are. And therein lies how Bo Nix, who is receiving votes, and if I just take this list, they don't rank them. They just throw together a list of other quarterbacks that received votes. And it's Murray, Purdy, Dak, Aaron Rodgers, Tua, and Bo Nix. So he's on the radar of NFL personnel, but he's not one of the top 10, and he's not even honorable mention with CJ Stroud and Jordan Love are. And I think that that's fair. I did this exercise a while back, and I said I think that Bo Nix is at best the 15th best quarterback in the NFL, but I think he's more in here, 16, 17, 18, and that's where he is. But he can jump over Tua, Rodgers, Dak. I don't know if he'll jump over Purdy because I'm not giving up on the 49ers yet. But I think that there is a decent chance, or I'll put it this way. I see the pathway to Bo Nix being in the top 10 next year. And it's two things that Bo Nix can do. And it's not necessarily he's got to throw for X more touchdowns, X fewer interceptions. Win close games and beat other guys on this list. It's a very simple recipe. Mention Herbert and the Chargers, 4-4 in one-score games. The Broncos were 1-6. I saw a poll that Good Morning Football put out today. It was on X. Saying, other than Mahomes, what quarterback in the AFC West do you trust the most with the game on the line? And Bo Nix got 55% of the vote. And that, to me, was stunning. The Broncos were 1-6 in one-score games. That is literally the definition of the ball is in your hands with the chance to win. How in the world Bo Nix could win that, I think, is based on preconceived notions about what the Chargers have been in this notion of chargering and not actually looking at the facts. The facts are not only did Justin Herbert fare better in games where the ball was in his hands with the game on the line, twice that situation came up against Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos, and the Chargers won. So I think look, I'll take Bo Nix in a late game situation over Geno Smith. I have no issue with that. But the Broncos were 1-6 in one-score games. Every one of those 6 losses are on Bo Nix? No. But this idea that Bo Nix has this clutch gene, I haven't seen it yet. So if he fares better in one-score games, which is a big key to the Denver Broncos eclipsing their win total of last year, got to win more of these close games than 1 out of 7. I think Bo Nix can raise up on this list, and he's got to beat some of the guys. Even though it's the quarterback against the opposing defense, we always make it head-to-head. Josh Allen against Lamar Jackson against Patrick Mahomes. And yes, that argument loses a lot of nuance, but it's the way people think. If Bo Nix were to step onto a football field next year let's just start with Justin Herbert. And that's why I keep going back to this idea that next up for the Broncos is taking down Kansas City. I'm sorry, the Chargers are still standing between those two teams. And the Broncos were swept by LA. So there's still another step for them to go. But if Bo Nix can get on the field with Justin Herbert and the Broncos can emerge victorious, he can certainly close the gap a little bit. And I don't think it will take much for him to jump a Tua and Aaron Rodgers. I don't think it's going to take Bo Nix, even though I think that he and the Broncos are going to take a step back this year, I still think that he can be good enough to jump some of these players. Like Aaron Rodgers and Tua, to me, are on their last legs. If they don't produce this year, they're done. So I think Bo Nix can creep up the list to get into the top 10. He's got to beat some of the guys on this list. Last year, of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, he won one game. That was against Baker Mayfield, who's ranked 10th. Got to win some of these premier matchups. And got to win games with the ball in his hand late. That's how he gets into the top 10. Rounding out the list. So Herbert 7, all good with that. Goff 8, Hurts 9, Baker 10th. I asked this question to somebody earlier. Because sometimes we can bring a lot of different things into the mix here when we're evaluating quarterbacks. Sometimes you just boil it down to tomorrow, you must win a football game. Put whatever stakes you want to on it, right? It's the Super Bowl. Your family's being held hostage, whatever you want to do. But you got to win a football game tomorrow. Are you rolling with Baker or are you rolling with Jared Goff? Because with Jalen Hurts, I have my issues with Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's incredibly overrated at 9. But I can say this about Jalen Hurts, despite his deficiencies, despite the fact that he is buoyed by arguably the best roster in the NFL, the dude shows up in big games. Guy's a big-time player. But Jared Goff, and I'll extend it, you got to win a football game tomorrow. You're rolling with Jalen Hurts? You might have to find out who else is on your team, to be fair. But you want to roll with Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, or Jared Goff. And when I'm like, it's a one-off, it's a game I have to win, Jalen Hurts has proven on the biggest of stages, even when the Eagles lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, wasn't because of Jalen Hurts. He is a big game player. Now, the 17 games during the regular season, that's where I quarrel with Jalen Hurts. But if I got one game to win tomorrow, high stakes, I'm rolling with Baker over Jared Goff. The attitude that Baker Mayfield has, I want a little bit of that. I get Jared Goff, more prototypical passer. He's very good. Again, we're in many ways splitting hairs. I think I move Jared Goff down. Like, I would take Baker Mayfield over Jared Goff. Not a lot of controversy on this list. A few tweaks here and there. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. ESPN's poll of NFL personnel when it comes to the cornerback position doesn't come out for a couple of days. We know who's going to be number one or should be number one unequivocally on that list. So why is that guy now at best the 5th highest paid corner in the National Football League? Welcome in, Drive Time Sports. As the disembodied voice said, glad to have you. Appreciate you listening to the show or watching and listening, which you can do on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Handles the same, all of those different places. If you want to participate in the show that you are watching or listening to, which some mediums don't give you that opportunity, I do on a daily basis, and I genuinely love to hear from you. 719-247-1313. You could call or text in, or if you're watching on social media, you could just say something right there. It'll come up. So, some business is getting done across the NFL leading into training camp opening up, most notably with the Jets, who have paid both Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner very lucrative contract extensions. In fact, Sauce Gardner is now the highest paid cornerback in the National Football League by $100,000 over Derek Stingley of the Texans. That sounds a little petty. $100,000. Why not just do $1 more? But you acknowledge, as much as I do, that Sauce Gardner, while a terrific corner, is not the best in the league, nor is Derek Stingley as talented as he is. Pat Surtain is not only the best corner in the National Football League, based on a piece of hardware he won last year, he is the best player playing defense currently in the National Football League. And if you were to look at the top highest paid corners in the National Football League, Pat Surtain is not second. He's not third. He's not fourth. He's fifth. And it wasn't that long ago. In fact, a year ago, he got his contract extension. And now all of a sudden, because at the time it made him the highest paid, now he's not. Not even close. Well, I shouldn't say that. In terms of ranking, not that close. And really, when you look at the way that NFL contracts should be looked at, really, it should be a percentage of the cap. But that's not grabby. That's not sexy for agents to be able to tout, right? Surtain, if you take the percentage of the cap that he takes up, he ranks 7th among corners. And again, not only is Pat Surtain the best corner in football, he's the best defensive player in football. So I can't even imagine where he would, if you threw in pass rushers. And look, I'm the first person to tell you that a pass rusher is more valuable than a shutdown corner. Okay, but the optics of Pat Surtain being the reigning defensive player of the year, and he's taking up the 7th most cap space of any corner. He's the 5th highest paid corner. When he was deemed to be a better defensive player this year than any safety, any inside linebacker, pass rusher, defensive lineman, it's stunning. And why is this? What is this phenomenon? It's not that Pat Surtain took a sweetheart deal. Not really. The Broncos locked him up early. See, the Jets had no choice. They had to make Sauce Gardner the highest paid corner in the NFL. They had to go over everybody, which again, the Broncos did with Surtain, but they did it seeing that there are other corners in the league that are inevitably going to get paid. So they saw all they needed to see from Pat Surtain, and they said, he's that guy. He's everything we need him to be. We have no doubts about what he's going to be moving forward. We're going to sign him now. And the credit that you do give Pat Surtain is that he was willing to sign the deal when he did. Right? To sign a year early. Because some guys would say, no, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till my contract is about up and I'm going to cash in. Pat Surtain was willing to sign. Didn't take a huge discount, but now it looks like a discount. Now it looks like the Broncos are stealing Patrick Surtain. And this is the benefit of identifying a guy that you think is special, identifying him early and being motivated to lock him up as soon as you possibly can, making the guy feel wanted, and getting it done. And teams can feel a certain way about a player and want to get him signed, and it may not end up working out. But I think you look at far too many other teams, and it's, we'll get to it when we get to it. We're going to wait and see. You know, we still have them under contract. There's no reason for us to move on this. He's got to be here. You know, that kind of thinking does permeate throughout certain NFL front offices. And inevitably, what's going to happen to those people? Bengals? They pay more. You're going to pay more in the long run. It's the same thing with quarterbacks. Everyone clutches their pearls every time a quarterback gets paid. And then what happens? One season goes, we go to another re-signing cycle, another cycle where contract extensions and the Trevor Lawrence deal or the Justin Herbert deal or the Patrick Mahomes deal or whatever quarterback deal you want to point to, it's like now it looks like a bargain. So part of this is just, you know, the salary cap goes up and players can ask for more money. But some of this is some of these deals that at the time you go, wow, he's the highest paid, or that's a big contract. They got it done a wee bit earlier than they needed to, and inevitably they end up saving money. So I don't know how you can look at anybody else in the NFL and not say that Pat Surtain is the NFL's biggest bargain. Maybe if Jaden Daniels has a similar season, the fact that he's on a rookie quarterback contract, he might be that. But for right now, I'll say Pat Surtain, the reigning defensive player of the year, the best corner in the league, being, depending on what metric you look at, either the 5th or the 7th highest paid corner in the league. That's a steal. That's a bargain. Now, moving this forward, the Broncos have some decisions to make, don't they? Nick Bonitto, Zach Allen. These are players, most notably, that are due for a contract extension. With Nick Bonitto, they didn't have the luxury that they did with Pat Surtain. Right? Nick Bonitto just got good this year. Right? And also time didn't work on their side because Nick Bonitto is a 2nd-round pick, which means you don't get that 5th-year option. So the sands went through the hourglass a little quicker on the Denver Broncos when it comes to Nick Bonitto. So that's that, and the fact that, again, Nick Bonito didn't really show much until this year. Like, he was intriguing before, but this year, statistically, he was one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And now the Broncos got to do it, because if the Broncos paid Nick Bonito market value for a pass rusher this time last year, if you're a Broncos fan, you would have rioted. It would say Nick Bonito is nowhere deserving of that. So when it comes to Nick Bonito, I don't think it's a matter of, well, maybe they don't believe that Nick Bonito's their guy. It just, the timeline was moved up because Bonito's a second-round pick and because Nick Bonito popped later than Pat Surtain did. So there's a little, they say that timing is everything. There's a little bit of luck involved with this, right? Pat Surtain hit immediately and continued to hit. Nick Bonito just had this year. Now, even though I think those are the biggest reasons, I can't say that the Denver Broncos aren't having some conversations, and this is not me reporting anything. I'm just putting myself in their position. I don't think they can be as eager to pay fair market value to Nick Bonito as they were Pat Surtain. I think they believe in him, and I think Nick Bonito is going to be, for years to come, a very productive pass rusher. Is he going to be TJ Watt? No. But he's the best that the Broncos have at that position. They're incredibly productive at that position. Like, I think Nick Bonito should be extended. But to put him at the top of the market, if that's what he's trying to get, I would understand if the Broncos are like, hold on here. So he's a second-round pick, so we didn't get the fifth-year option, and he just hit this year, and now he's ready to get paid. Let's take a beat here and really think about this. I think Nick Bonito gets extended. I do. Can they find a bit of a bargain? Do I foresee Nick Bonito becoming the highest paid pass rusher in the NFL? No. I don't see that. But he's going to be well compensated. He's going to be near the top because that's just the way it works. But I would understand if the Broncos are like, hang on, let's really think about this. Now, Zach Allen, on the other hand, and I've been on this for a year, I don't think that the Broncos are interested in paying him nearly top of market. If there is an either or to be had here, I pay Nick Bonito 10 out of 10 times before I pay Zach Allen. Age, position, these things matter. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't make sense to keep Zach Allen around for a couple more years. But this idea that they got to, pay Nick Bonito whatever he wants and then pay Zach Allen, and nope. I don't think that's the case. Nick Bonito, I think, does he deserve to be one of the highest paid pass rushers? I guess you could argue he doesn't, because especially that TJ Watt and Trey Hendrickson are looking for new contracts. Would I pay Nick Bonito before I paid those two guys? No. Would I pay Nick Bonito more than those two guys? No. But the position he plays, his age, and what I think he's going to be, yeah, I give him an extension, a lucrative one. Just maybe not top of market. With Zach Allen, I'll take every minute I've got. I'll wait. I may even entertain the possibility of letting Zach Allen hit the open market. And it's not so much, me dogging on Zach Allen. Some of it's his age, but also it's going to be sooner than you think that Bo Nix is going to need an extension of his own. And if you start to lock up every guy that you can, all of a sudden it becomes really tough. And let's also not forget that Russell Wilson, the ghost of Russell Wilson, is still kind of being visited upon the Denver Broncos. They're not out from under that completely yet. But the Broncos, it's all well and good right now. You think that the money's flowing and you just pay everybody. It's funny. There's two schools of thought out there. It's when you have a rookie quarterback, you can spend as much money as you want, right? Load up on talent, give everybody extensions, all this kind of stuff. Or the other side is, once you pay a quarterback, you're done. It's like, no, look at the contracts that the Chiefs have handed out. They just made Trey Smith the highest paid interior lineman in the history of football. Like, the truth is somewhere in the middle. You can't spend like drunken sailors just because you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, because before you know it, he's going to be doing extension. And then that's when you start having to cut guys and it becomes costly. You eat dead cap. And on the other side, it doesn't doom you the way that some might think once you pay your quarterback. Somewhere in the middle, and the Broncos are kind of, I think, taking part in that balancing act. We want to keep this team together. We think we have a good thing going. Bo Nix doesn't have to be paid right this second, but we still have to keep in mind, if Bo Nix is the guy we think he is, he's going to become very expensive and then in the not too distant future. And do we want to be on the hook for all of these other extensions? And I think that's part of the reason why Nick Bonitto and certainly Zach Allen are not signed up yet. But we'll see if maybe there's a TJ Watt impact as well on all of this. So I think there's a lot of things that George Paton is wading through, and I'm sure Sean Payton is right by his side, giving him whatever his thoughts are on the matter. But I just go back to, like, with Surtain, it was a no-brainer. It was take all of the money. We want to pay you as soon as we possibly can. And the Broncos look like geniuses because they did that. Not every player is as much of a sure thing as Pat Surtain seemed to be. And those extensions, sometimes you do end up paying more in the end, but you want to be 100% sure. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, as all these college football media days are happening across the country, one of the biggest topics is, of course, the future of the college football playoff. So what model are you about? The 5+11 or the 4-4-2-2-1? I'll explain what those are and let you know what some of the bigger conferences and the smaller ones think of those formats next on Extra Sports 1300. Reminder, you can interact with the show if you're watching on our social media platforms like Facebook. And then I can do this fancy thing where I just, boom. Eric says Benito has had one good year. Let's see him do it again. That's fine. Because I said, I don't blame anyone that watches the Broncos, roots for the Broncos, is involved with the Broncos to be like, okay, are we 100% sure about this? I understand that with Nick Benito. But because of the position he plays, you are going to pay more later than you're going to pay now, which may actually not be an issue if the Broncos are of like mind with me, which is, as much as I like Zach Allen, I don't know that I'm, backing up the Brinks truck. That might be the guy that I'm looking to get signed to a team-friendly deal. And if you are able to accomplish that, then a slight overpay of Nick Benito or paying him closer to the top of market may not hurt as much. So that's fine, and I understand why there would be people to go, it's 1 year. Let's see him do it again. But time's running out on the Broncos. And that's why I was trying to explain. Like Nick Benito is a second-round pick. They have to do this sooner. He's a free agent after this year. If they don't get this done, there is a world where Nick Benito equals or exceeds his production, and now the idea of him being paid the same as TJ Watt isn't going to be, it still might sound a little insane, but given the economics of the NFL and the fact that Nick Benito is about to hit the open market as a free agent, he's not going to be that far behind him. You're going to have to pay more later, and that's what's happening with the corners. Broncos knew they had their guy in Surtain. Surtain loved being with the Broncos enough to bet on them as much as they were betting on him. They came together. They signed a contract a year early, and the Jets didn't have that luxury for whatever reason. And now they had to pay Sauce Gardner $100,000 more than every other corner in the NFL. You wait, you're going to end up paying more. And can you live with that? That's what the Broncos are weighing right now when it comes to Nick Benito. To college football, where one of the biggest topics at these media days, whether it's Big 10, Big 12, SEC, the new college football playoff model that has to be in place by December 1st, or else it's not changing. I'll just say right off the top, when it comes to that, they're going to come up with an idea. Okay, right now, they have, talking about time not on the side of the Denver Broncos with Nick Benito. Time is on the side of college football as a collective. They have time between now and December to figure out which model they're going to go with. The 5+11, which is basically the system we have in place now, just with a few more teams, right? It will be the only 5 conference champions get automatic bids. There's only a Power 4. So that means Pac-12, Mount West, Sun Belt, et cetera, has access to that. So there's that one. And then there's the 4-4-2-2-1 model, which is Big 10 and the SEC as the people who run college football get 4 automatic bids, no matter what. Then the lesser of the Power 4, ACC, Big 12, get 2 automatic bids. That leaves 1 at large, which is important. They're not saving the one for the highest ranking conference champion out of the group of, I guess it's now 6 with the Pac-12 rebuilding itself starting next year. It's not guaranteed to them. So if you're somebody that is a proponent of the access that Boise State enjoyed last year, that you may hope one day CSU can take advantage of, or Air Force, or any other team in the Mountain West, the Sun Belt, the Pac-12, you should be a proponent of 5+11, because the 4-4-2-2-1 is just super serving the Power Four, and I would bet you anything that one at large is going to be decided between the Power Four. Now, for the record, seems like most everybody is on board with the 5+11. Kirby Smart said today at SEC Media Days that while there's not a consensus, the majority of them favor 5+11. Greg Sankey, commissioner of the SEC, seems to be a 5+11 guy. Brett Yormark of the Big 12 commissioner, 5+11. So who is this proponent of the 4-4-2-2-1? Because I look at it and I say this is the worst. Keep it where it is. This right now is better than this 4-4-2-2-1. Interestingly enough, the Big Ten likes this model. To me, it's a little apples and oranges, but if there was an NFL version of this, I would think that the AFC North, the AFC West, if they were conferences, would say the 5+11. You know what? Because they're like, we have so many good teams, we're going to get a lot in. I could imagine the AFC and NFC South wanting to do the 4-4-2-2-1 because they're like, every year we might not be that good. So it's kind of odd to me that the Big Ten commissioner is saying, I want 4 slots guaranteed every year. Feels to me like he doesn't have the utmost confidence in his conference. I mean, he'll probably chalk it up to protecting the investments that they make, and I can understand that to an extent, but you're the Big Ten. It's you and the SEC. You're running college football. You will be fine. But then again, what was the conversation around Indiana last year? So maybe the Big Ten and the SEC have the hammer, so to speak, when it comes to the future of the college football playoff and the future of college football and college athletics in general. But maybe they're not, the Big Ten and the SEC aren't quite on equal footing when it comes to the strength of their conferences in football. But whatever the Big Ten's motivation is to back this 4-4-2-2-1, it's a terrible model. 5-11. Okay. I don't know that I love expansion. We saw early on in this college football playoff with less than 16 teams, we got a bunch of garbage football the first weekend. And I absolutely shudder to think what the first weekend or first few nights of the NCAA basketball tournament is going to look like. If they expand like they're going to. Like, we just don't need it. We don't need 16 teams. There aren't 16 elite championship-worthy teams in college football right now. There just aren't. Maybe one day there will be. It's not right now. So, and I think that's part of why Greg Sankey, he said the other day, look, if we don't have a consensus, we'll just keep it the way it is. Because I think the SEC still feels like, you know what, we're going to get our spots. Maybe not every single team that we want to get in, but we'll get our spots more often than not. And then we'll expand eventually. But we really don't need to go to 16. The only argument to go to 16 is not because of a quality of product. It's because now all of these schools are opting into revenue sharing, so they need more revenue. Allegedly. Allegedly, they need more revenue. But that's what they'll say. We're doing revenue sharing. We got to make up for that $20.5 million salary cap some way. So we expand both the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournament and the college football playoff. More revenue accounts for the fact that we are sharing revenue with our athletes. But if we're going to 16 teams, 5 plus 11, better, because I want the access for the second tier of college football. I want that carrot out there for a CSU, for an Air Force, for a Boise State, Army, Appalachian State. I want the little guy to get a chance. I don't need a lot of them, and I'm pretty confident that most of them will get smacked around playing with the big boys, but I still want them to get that chance. And this 4 bids to the SEC, 4 to the Big Ten, 2 to the ACC, 2 to the Big 12, leaving 1 at large. That's not access. I mean, they'll argue it could be. It's an at large. It could be anybody. I know what they're going to do with that. 5 plus 11. And they have time. They'll come to a consensus. And as Greg Sankey intimated, he was talking about Brett Yormark, who, interestingly enough, agrees with his conference when it comes to the superior college football playoff model, but just kind of made it be known that, yeah, it's ultimately our decision. That's fine that Brett Yormark wants to weigh in or Jim Phillips with the ACC want to weigh in, but we really decide. They don't have to consult a lot of people. So December 1st is not a deadline that's impossible to reach. Greg Sankey will wake up maybe on November 15th and go, yeah, we're ready to go. 5 plus 11. Take your thoughts on what model you would prefer and why. Here's another important part. Lane Kiffin brought this up. Lane Kiffin, the voice of reason in college football. Kiffin said this, according to ESPN, the 13-member selection committee should be compromised. It should be comprised of educated media people, not compromised, Freudian slip, compromised by ADs who, they have to leave the room. They don't get to say anything when their team is being discussed, but yet they can, like that. Remember North Carolina getting into the NCAA tournament? Remember that whole nonsense? Conflict of interest here. I don't care whether you can speak or not. You're on the committee with these people. You have influence. Lane Kiffin is 100% right. Educated media people. People that sit and watch these games on a Saturday for a living. Doesn't mean that group will be infallible. We'd still argue. We'd still call out people. Look at what we do with the Hall of Fame or the MVP. We're like trying to find the one person who voted Angel Reese for Rookie of the Year over Caitlin Clark. The people that voted for Joel Embiid over Nikola Jokic. Like, we do this no matter what. But it's just, what's the best entity that can vote on these things? I'll take, the guys on College Game Day, not all of them, but some of the guys on College Game Day, some of the guys on Fox, I'll take them as a group that can get us closer to 100% accuracy in terms of who deserves to be in it. And transparency. More and more transparency. It's sports. Okay? It's not the Supreme Court. Like, let us see it. 719-247, 1313. Coming up next, as sports leagues, in particular the NFL and the NBA, but in all walks of life, we're always looking to the future, right? How do you get the younger demographic? Well, the younger demographic has weighed in on what they would do to make the NFL and the NBA more appealing. And after I tell you their suggestions, you may be like, you know what? We don't need their opinion. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Don't forget that national keyword for your chance to win a trip to the U.S. tour stop of your choice to see the Black Keys for their No Rain, No Flowers tour. The national keyword is players, PLAYERS. If you text that to 95819, you'll be entered to win, and you can listen all this week, all day long. Well, I'll just tell you, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's just between us. That's when those national keywords will be going on, and you can enter a lot for a chance to see the Black Keys in the U.S. tour stop of your choice. So I don't know about the business that you're in, but the business that I am in, I have sat in many, many meetings where ideas on how to attract younger, in my case, audience members, but just customers, right? How do we get the younger customers? You get them early, they stick around. You know, you've been taught this in any business course you've taken, right? Get a customer early, keep them around. That's the way to succeed. So the younger demographic that we're talking about is, of course, Gen Z. Okay, I believe the ages of Gen Z right now are 20 to 28. So if there's anybody, if you yourself are this, please don't take offense to this, what I'm about to get into. I'm a fan of Gen Z, but do they know what they want as a consumer? They know what they want now, but is it ultimately best for the product to have Gen Z as your advisory board? I'll let you be the judge of this. So, this Time to Play is who did this study, this survey. Want to give them credit because I did find it very interesting. They talked about how, what Gen Z, they talked to Gen Z to figure out what they would do, how they feel about the NFL and the NBA in particular. And if they are not that big of a fan of it, what can those leagues do? I think it is a red flag right off the top that in the second paragraph of this study, they pointed out that only 11.5% of NBA viewers are in that age range that are Gen Z. Okay, small portion. Now, can you get more of that? Sure, but how much more? Okay, if only 11.5% of the NBA audience is Gen Z, then maybe Gen Z just overall isn't that interested in the NBA. Also, only 27% of Gen Zers would identify as NFL fans. So those percentages, I can understand why the NBA and the NFL would want to grow that percentage. But part of me, when I read that, feels like maybe they can't be completely won over. And are you really want to put in the effort to get these people to be a part? Maybe catch them when they're a little bit older. But I continue. So Gen Zers were asked, well, for the NFL, okay, you and I feel like the NFL is a great product, not without its flaws, but it's the best there is going when it comes to sports for most people. What would Gen Z do to improve it? Here are some of their suggestions. You want to get Gen Z, Roger Goodell, you need to do a combination of the following. One, reduce the number and or length of commercial breaks. I think every generation, boomers, millennials, Gen Z, whatever my kids are, whatever generation they are, fewer commercial breaks, shorter commercial breaks. I think we're all in favor. Gen Z, right there with you. Introduce a running game clock like in soccer or basketball. My issue with that is not so much the idea of a running clock, but the fact that there are some people in Gen Z who think that basketball's clock runs the same way as soccer's. Soccer is unique in that way that they are the only sport that has a clock that operates in that fashion. Basketball operates much the same way the NFL does. So if you're saying introduce a running game clock like soccer, okay, interesting. I don't know that I would completely agree, but it's an interesting thought. But like basketball, it does run like basketball. It counts down. There are stoppages, and then it starts again. So second red flag. And I'm like, okay, this is only going to get worse. And it did. Here's my favorite. Introduce power plays to make it more exciting like the NHL, which, by the way, if power plays are super appealing to Gen Z, I need to see the Gen Z numbers with the NHL. Because I would say if it's 27% Gen Zers say they're NFL fans, 11.5% of NBA fans are Gen Z, I promise you hockey is a smaller percentage. All these Gen Zers are watching hockey, which would warm my heart, being the hockey guy that I am. But it's like there's a sport already with power plays. You should watch that sport all the time. But how is that going to work in the NFL? So Garrett Bowles is called for a holding penalty, and now TJ Watt gets to run unimpeded to Bo Nix. Now, sure, the Broncos would slide protection, but somebody would be left unblocked. There are already guys, if you send enough numbers, that are unblocked normally, and now you're losing an offensive tackle who is in the sin bin for 2 minutes for holding. Okay? You know what? Maybe I'm just being too much of a traditionalist. Don't like that idea. And then I realized, no, they're just like, they just want chaos. They're the Joker from The Dark Knight. They just want to see the world burn. Here's the next one. Limit the number of penalty flags per team per half to keep the game flowing. Now, we can all agree that there are too many penalties. But the absence of those penalties, it would essentially turn into a football version of the purge. You get 3 false start penalties on the opening drive, which I wouldn't put it past some teams to intentionally take 3 consecutive false start penalties. You've reached your quota. You can no longer be charged with a penalty. Can you imagine what they would do after that? I don't think that can actually happen. To put a limit on the penalty flags, like, how about the players just don't commit penalties? Like, that would be the best thing to do. Or maybe the NFL officials can just, because I get what they're getting at. Too many penalties, too many stoppages. I agree. But you can't have the purge after 3, 4, 5 penalties. I promise you teams will intentionally take, oops, opening kickoff went out of bounds. Oops, we jumped offside. Oops, we jumped offside again. Now we can do whatever we want. That's not going to happen. So I say Gen Z in many different businesses, including my own, we want you. We want your patronage. But you got to come up with better ideas. You got to give us better ideas because these are impractical. And in the case of the last one, quite dangerous. Give you a little bit later what they decided with the NBA, how they would improve the NBA. Now let me speak to a different generation. Not speaking to Gen Z anymore, although one day Gen Z. But if you're a guy and you're living with tiredness and low energy, it could be low testosterone. You can get your life back with testosterone therapy at Low T Center. That's the best place to go. Why? Because you could take the test, get fast results, and start TRT with Colorado Springs' leading experts in men's health. Now it's easier than ever to do so with the new Synergenx Health app, SYNERGENX Health app. See what they did? We were talking about Gen Z, Synergenx Health app. It's an innovation in healthcare technology you won't find anywhere else. So they're the best at what they do. They have proprietary things that they can do to help you out, like the Synergenx Health app. Kind of feels like Low T Center is the place to go. Download the Synergenx Health app now or book an appointment and do it now while the test is still free, which it is right now. The website, fixmylowt.com. That's fixmylowt.com.